friends, and welcome to the first ever video podcast for music in our world. I have sort of been working on getting some better equipment and upping my game in general. Started doing some Started doing some streaming on Twitch, streaming video games and a little bit of music composition. But I think, especially right now, since most of like these, if we're going to do an interview style podcast, it's not really likely that we're going to be in the same room. So since everyone's kind of figured out their video and voice over internet ideas, figured I may as well sort of include that and sort of move to that side of things. I'm also going to be putting more stuff up on YouTube, so I'll put the links and everything to the pretty much everything, because there's a lot of things that we mentioned in this episode that are really cool. People are doing a lot of really great things right now, and I think it's nice to include all of those things. So as well as this podcast that's going to go up on YouTube, I'm going to be sort of creating small videos to accompany, or maybe even just to still to sort of have a video version of the previous episodes on the podcast. I'm also going to take that opportunity to go back and revisit some audio issues, maybe see if I can clean those up and get them to be a little bit more pleasing to the ear. You can also find those on Anchor. I've moved pretty much all of my podcast dealings to Anchor. They are a little bit more generous with the sort of ad revenue that we can generate. So that's something that really helps out. You know, as we sort of talk about in the video here, there's a lot going on, and it's tricky to make money, I guess, to create a living for oneself as a musician and performer. So we talk about that in the video. The guys in Rogues Among Us are super insightful and, you know, working musicians. So I had a lot of fun with it, and it was really cool to sort of explore the video medium, and I hope you guys dig it. And be sure to click the subscribe button if you want to see more of these, and then the notification button if you want to be notified when they are uploaded. You will also hear from me on my Facebook page and probably a text message. I like to tell people what I'm up to. So also check me out on Twitch, twitch.tv/ornithmusic. Pretty much streaming daily at about 9 o'clock. It's a little bit late, I know, for some folks, but if you want to join me for some video games and talk about music and often composition, it would be really cool to have y'all out there on that platform. But without further ado, please enjoy the interview with Rogues Among Us.
So, I know there's been a couple people that have asked me. I don't know why this is so fascinating to people, but I am equally fascinated by it. Whenever I tell people about a group, especially if I'm in it, they're like, "I wonder where they got their name from." So, I would love to hear the origin story of the name Rogues Among Us.
That's Mark yeah. Put it in a random generator. Basically, Mark chose it for us.
Okay, so what had happened was...
What happened?
We each came up with 5 names apiece. And just like, oh, whatever you like, you know. We all had our own little things. Some of them were just like variations of the same thing. But, yeah, once we got the list, I told him, all right, I'm going to put it in a randomizer. And I'm going to throw dice to see how many times. And then I threw another dice, like I think out of 100. And whatever the number landed on 100, or out of the 100, that's how many times it roll and randomize itself. And so but when I did, it came up with Rogues Among Us, and it kind of pissed off everyone because they're like, well, that was your name. That was the name you picked and you wanted. It's like, I know, but the randomizer did it. Like, I even videotaped it so you know.
It was even funnier because he did it twice, and the first time it came up with his fucking name, and then we were like, no, do it again, and then we did it again, and it came up with his name again. So
So
was great.
clearly it was on my side.
he clearly cheated.
Okay, so it just sounds like the RNG gods were on your side, Mark,
That's what
that
I
day.
think. And I usually roll terribly, so I'm surprised I actually got something.
I'm still petitioning to get our name changed to Rongo Dongo.
Okay, that was my next thing is I feel like, oh man, people a lot of times leave a huge decision like the name, like the entire future of the brand up to like, yeah, I drew some shit out of a hat. It was pretty cool. But it works though, like Rogues Among Us is an excellent name. I like.
It's super unique. The only issue is that everyone misspells it.
Rouges.
Rouges.
Hey,
We're clearly makeup.
you gotta go Rouge. You gotta
And
go
on-
Rouge all the time.
Honestly, I've loved it because since we've had that name, we've had so many variations of insults with it, like Rugs Around Us,
Oh,
Fungus
We're-
Among Us.
We're actually thinking of starting a makeup line that is Rouges Among Us, and it's just, you know.
Yeah. I think
Oh,
that
man.
would work, honestly. And
Yeah,
I think
at the merch table.
at the merch table, I think we should
We'll have one of
also-
those ladies that paints it on you and stuff. I don't know how Rouge works.
I think that's pretty evident.
Perfect. Good. So it works for the bit.
It's that, and we should have an Incubus cover band called Fungus Among Us at this point.
Yes, definitely. Definitely.
Fungus among them.
And we only do that one album. Was it like 5
That's it.
tracks?
Yeah,
Sweet.
that's all we do.
I would love that.
Well, right on. I am curious. Okay, so Rongo Dongo. What were some of the other names that were like on the chopping block, or do you guys remember any like that stick out for you?
I had one that I know I was pushing for, and then now I look back on it and I'm like, that's so dumb. It's so edgelord. It's so dumb. It was like Fallen Paragon or something like that.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, I was like,
that would have pushed us into like the niche of having to be progressive as fuck all the time.
yeah, and I was like, that's like baby's first edgelord like band name, you know.
That's no regressive memory, I'll tell you that. I think
Oh,
what was it?
God.
I think I picked out One Fine Day, which would have probably pushed us into the pop punk realm.
That's
Yeah.
Tight Pants Rock.
It is. That's
That's a number and a day.
exactly.
And the word day in the same thing. Hey.
We gotta have like checkered guitar straps and stuff.
Yep.
And my hi-hat needs to be above my head, right? That's
Oh my god.
And
And
double kick.
no one gets to wear a
Okay.
shirt.
It's called a hi hat for a
Double
reason,
kick.
John. Learn your instrument.
I will
Double
never
hat.
I will never learn my instrument ever.
At level hat.
Those are great. Man.
I don't actually
That's-
remember any of mine. I might have put Fugly. I've always thought that was a fantastic band name. I will make a band called Fugly at some point in my life, but I may have put that in the hat. I'm not sure.
Well, you know, these can also be used for like album names or song names down the road.
No, it has to be a band.
Yeah, I can't
Okay.
wait to release the Fugly album.
It just depends. It just depends on how many side projects we take on. Okay.
Quick note.
Uh-huh.
Rongo Dongo was something that our former bassist Ray came up with that. He called us Rongo Dongo, right? I used it in a Dungeons and Dragons campaign
Excellent.
because my character was a bard and he was the former frontman of a band called Rongo Dongo.
I feel like you used it in almost all your D&D campaigns at this point.
Oh yeah, no. In high school D&D, there's a fake like, pop band called Rongo Dongo that's like famous in Japan.
What's his name?
So to me there's a sort of I don't want to say serious. It's not super serious. None of this is super serious, but that does make me wonder too, because when I first heard Rogue's music, I was like, that's an apt name. Was there any sort of did you guys think of it in that sort of meta way? Like, okay, we've got the band name. How far along the process in developing the sound did the name come? Because I know some
Not
people it wasn't not relevant necessarily at all.
not from my recollection, like at all. Like I'm pretty sure Robert and Mark and our first drummer Chris had some songs fleshed out, and I brought one to the group, and we just kind of played him a couple times, tried to nail him down as tight as possible, added stuff, took stuff away, and then just went into the studio, and that was pretty much it. So we kind of just grew from there. I guess like kind of grew into the name if you feel like it really fits. But I don't remember ever thinking about that in that kind of like sort of linear or whatever you want to call it way. I don't know about these guys.
I feel like sometimes like we've had moments where like we want to be conceptual with the name, but it hasn't always panned out that way. I feel like nowadays we've figured out how to make it be understandable and work in comparison when we first started, and it's like it was more of an aesthetic that we still didn't figure out how to actually do. Which makes sense. I mean, when you first start off with anything like this, any branding or anything like that, like you're gonna have pitfalls of really just discovering your identity. And so not until you find it and then solidify it, which takes sometimes years, and also morphs over time. Like that's that's when you start to get your legging, I think.
Yeah, I mean that's something that's always going to be constantly evolving, and you change personnel, people move, people get married, have kids, change jobs. Like that's all going to inform, totally.
Yeah.
Are there any parts of? I mean, I know that since I've sort of come along, I've kind of asked these questions before, but I'm curious, like as far as identity and branding goes, have you guys had any specific goals, or has it just been exclusively letting the music play out, and then you take from that, what goes on there? How has that fallen in for you guys?
Well, I mean, our big goal has always been to approach things not specifically just as musicians, but as entertainers. Mm-hmm. So, what kind of mediums can our music speak to? Not just are we musicians? Because ultimately, we enjoy music and we find music to be really entertaining. But in today's framework, you can't simply be a musician. You have to be more than that.
So was that a constant thought, like always thinking like, yeah, we're gonna play good music, but we're also gonna like did you have like personalities you developed, like a stage presence specifically, or I mean, I'm in the back. I try to be as expressive as I can, but there's usually a bass player and a lead singer in front of me, so the sort of characters that I've developed as part of like actual project bands or branded entities. I have a different perspective on that, no matter what, just because practicality. But how do y'all have characters that you approach, even if it's not explicitly stated somewhere, that kind of go along with what's happened in Rogues?
It seems like Mark has a character in mind when he's performing. Is that accurate, Mark?
Well, it's interesting because I feel like it's less and less of a character and more so of like my personality amped up like 110%.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
It's definitely a lot more freeing mentally and emotionally, and I just get to do whatever I want without going too far, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, Mark.
No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah, I was just gonna kind of launch off of what you just said about doing whatever you want, and I think that was kind of like, at least at the beginning, I felt like we approached things, music first. Like we're thinking about music, not the feel of the name or the branding that goes with it or anything like that. It was like, let's write these tunes. And I think I still feel that way, especially in performance mode, personally. Like when I'm playing, like I'm listening, I'm watching Mark, and like a lot of what I like to do is play with what he does or what other people do. And like I don't really think about my gestures or my movement or the character. I'm kind of into the music personally, which I do feel like is a big flaw for me. Rob has like incredible stage presence, and I wish I had a little bit more of that. But like Mark said, he's more him, 100%, and I think I'm like that's not me to move that much. So I'm cool without it. But yeah, I don't know if that made sense, but
No, and I think
Well,
that's good though. Like
if
to turn it on and off like that though.
if you want to dive into that, I I've always kind of been okay on stage presence, but I watched an interview with Alan Moore, and if you don't know who he is, he's the author of Watchmen, V for Vendetta,
Oh, okay.
various other graphic novels and novels, and I personally I don't follow his religious beliefs, but there's something he said in an interview that really like stuck out to me. So if you don't know, he's a magician, right? and and he made a comment that all forms of art in its own way is a branch of magic. So in a stage performance setting, whenever you're performing, you are essentially a shaman that is taking control of your audience and swaying their emotional feelings wherever you want that to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so I try to make a direct connection with the audience immediately, and then I sway them where I want them to go based on where the music's going.
So it's an actual effort. It's it's less. I mean, it's definitely rolling with it, but it's trying to sort of guide that experience. I think that's really cool. So, Mark, is that? Are we good?
Oh, it looks like it went away.
All right,
My
sweet.
bad.
It's all right.
Yeah,
Dude, it's all good. This is a new thing. This whole group interview thing remotely, man, we're making it happen. It's all good. So okay, and so we've kind of talked about like the identity and the character. The next sort of logical progression for me, and I will say the one of the things that draws me to a band is is it a cohesive idea when they release something? If it's an EP, do those 5 or 6 tracks, do they make sense together, or are they just kind of put together and the producer picked the order and no one cares? Or if it's like a full-length album, is there a journey that I'm going on? Could I analyze this musically and see some sort of progression? Do the lyrics tell a particular story? And this, I want to talk kind of more about the story first, and then once we kind of cover that, get into maybe the process, because I know that the ideas kind of overlap a little bit, but and it doesn't. I know the Subscribe record just came out, and so if y'all feel more compelled to talk about that first, and then maybe go back to older stuff, or start with older stuff. I obviously know the newer stuff better because I learned it to perform it, but I'm really curious, like what kinds of stories inspired those collections that are were put out together.
I mean, honestly, I feel like the big couple things that really influenced us was kind of seeing where everyone's headed towards nowadays, but also really heavily influenced by the TV show Black Mirror, and just like their surrealism with technology and just like this obsession of always trying to be better, and then it ends up making life way worse in reality, or just it always seemed like it never worked out completely the way they wanted it to. And with the story that we started to kind of create this little universe, you start to see more and more of like the failings of technology and the social pressure it ends up creating more than anything else, especially with Jason Valdez, our first EP for this concept story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with what Mark said about specifically this last album. It was a lot of kind of like sci-fi influence, especially Black Mirror, and kind of our own view of the world, because we all, at least the three of us, I'm not sure about Kevin. It seems like he's on the same page, but kind of we wanted some cautionary tales in there, and that's part of what sci-fi does, is they kind of like take things that happen in real life and then kind of extrapolate and take it a couple steps ahead, and then sometimes stuff from sci-fi films ends up happening, and it's like, whoa,
like all of this year.
Yeah,
Yeah, like
so,
Contagion. Contagion was literally this year, so.
Yeah, so, but for the other albums, I think the first EP, The Watcher, I think we were just trying to like write some really cool music. At least that was my feeling. Maybe my memory isn't clear. We wanted to write some awesome music that like took you on a journey. All three of those stories, well, at least the story for the for Lesser Grandstander and Eugen, I feel like those two really took you somewhere lyrically and musically. And then we had success with the second EP in that sense as well. And I think we tried to like make both of those bigger than they ended up being, in terms of like the continuity and the way the songs related to each other, and a real actual concept for the album. And I don't think either one of those really did what this last one does, but that doesn't mean that they weren't like awesome.
Right.
Especially as an experience to like learn writing together, so many different like little fights and battles, and also really cool moments where we come together and we just like know what's the next thing that we want to do. We all just have to get there. But I don't think that they were as conceived in the same way. I think they were like somebody wrote a song, or we all wrote a song together, or and then we just kind of, they ended up sounding like us because that's how we write.
Right.
But
There
not
was-
necessarily because
There was a little thing about The Watcher, and maybe it didn't come off 100% the way we wanted it to, but the idea was that we were trying to take our audience and put them in our shoes as we tell personal stories about people and events that we have witnessed. And like, Lesser Grandstander and Eugen, there were things that we witnessed from people that we knew in our lives, and we told those stories through those songs. The Wolf, Bradley brought that in, and
that was the same way. It was kind of a story in that sense. I don't think it like spoke as well as Lesser Grandstander and Eugen, but I think that's mostly because I wasn't there compositionally or lyrically at the time, and that's just what it is. But
You
Yeah.
grew though. You grew from that, honestly.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, no,
because then
I'm
the
not trying to. Yeah,
Yeah, because then the next record, like Flawless, like was
yeah.
amazing. That you.
No, it was
came up
good.
with.
It just
Yeah.
it was a personal story as well. That's what I'm really trying to say.
Analysis Paralysis, that was more of just a collection of songs. But at the same time, I think the title of the album actually did tell about, like, this is the struggles of being an artist and a musician, that you encounter writer's block so much and so often that sometimes it's better just to don't think about it too much and just
Yeah.
write some music.
I think
and get it
in-
out there for people, you know?
I think
still
in that sense, it really told our story as well, because we had a lot of like, it's like, it's a relationship, and it takes between, all of the members, and it takes time, and it takes nurturing, and it takes sweat and tears and all that and frustration. And so, we had a time where we really like had trouble communicating, and we were trying to like get these songs done, and everybody has a different vision for it, and sometimes you have the same vision but you put it in different words so you don't understand each other. And like learning that, we had to go through that phase to get to where we are now, which is like, I feel like the best place we've been in our relationships as musicians and as people. But I think what Robert's saying is totally right. Like, analysis paralysis describes like that moment for me in our relationship.
Yeah, because I still remember being on the highway when I pitched it, and I was like, I looked up something of just like, what is the technical term for not being able to, or to like, I guess like to just being the way that we are, being just confused. Like, we have so much stuff that we want to say, but we don't know how to get it out. We're just like what I'm doing right now. I'm having analysis paralysis as we speak. And I remember I saw that and I was like, oh shit, that sounds pretty cool in general. Like, that just sounds like a badass name for something. And everyone's like, oh yeah, that actually works really well, especially for the fact that we couldn't come up with a name.
Well, you get the meta idea of that built in right into any press you do. Is like, yeah, well, we were writing it.
We had no name
I
for
can't.
it.
It does sound cool. To me, and I think I may have I probably said this out loud before, and it's I am curious, and I want to talk a little bit about because I'm gonna go back and cover process and in just a little bit, but that's kind of a specific thing, and I think that having some stuff to inform how we think about process will help. But I've always thought, when I first saw, I don't even remember where it was probably somewhere that contributed to this romanticized idea I have it. But when I first saw Rogues live, I was thinking, man, this is cool. This is like the coolest thing. And part of that for me was that it was super thoughtful, but also there was a very specific look. And then as y'all were playing, I was hearing like, oh man, this music is it's compelling, and it's captivating, and so it kind of hits everything at once. There's fun time signatures, there's interesting scales, there's interesting harmonic ideas. So. And it's kind of tricky to sort of characterize that as a genre, I know, because some people are like, oh, it's progressive, or it's I don't know. Do you guys think of, if someone were to ask you, I know you put together descriptions of stuff, but the question I have is in sort of in that context, do you have if you had to say that you had a genre for Rogues music, so what's been written thus far, what would you call it, and what are some things that have sort of influenced that for y'all as individuals and as a group? Do you sit and listen to groups together or genres together? I'm curious about that.
I mean, we've listened to groups in the past. We actually used to do this thing where every week we'd bring a new song, and each person would comment on it and like tell what they got off of that. And that helped us all as a group kind of like synergize and sync together. Mm-hmm. As far as like at least how I would classify us genre wise and whatnot, I mean, really, I look at us as a rock group. And from there, I know that's very broad and that doesn't really like specifically define us, but one of our goals has always been, how can we be attractive to a bigger audience while still being able to enjoy the music for ourselves and for people who are musicians. So sophistication yet accessibility.
Yeah, it's tricky to walk that line. I mean,
and that's the thing is that especially with nowadays mainstream music is really basically a moving target that it's always going to move around. Like nothing stays on one thing for too long,
Right.
But I definitely think we've been heading in in a different direction from when we started. But that might just be because we've matured over time, over the past 5 years. In comparison to oh yeah, I only listen to Fall of Troy and I listen to Coheed and Cambria and this and that. To now it's like, dude, I'm showing them, Kali Uchis or different pop artists,
Kimbra.
Poppy and stuff like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
Kimbra, and understanding what they're coming up with and what you can take from their music and kind of pull into your own and have it leak into yours.
I still don't listen to any of that.
That's okay because I still do it anyways without you knowing. So.
oh, you see,
No, I know you do.
I definitely agree. I don't know what I would call us. I'd be interested to hear what Kevin thinks about
Kevin Collis.
the genre, since he's I wouldn't say he's a new member, but he's the newest member other than John, who's brand new, baby fresh new, yeah, I think we started trying to be prog, progressive, and I don't think that we really landed there. We had some weird time signature and stuff, but I think that, like Robert said, it just became this balance of accessibility and something that we want to play every time,
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest thing is that yeah, we got 2 guitars and a bass and drums and keys and other stuff in the records, and Mark's vocals, and the rock is true, like Robert said, and with the new stuff, I think we're utilizing more genres to tell different stories and a different character's perspective, and I'm really excited about the last album for sure, but the new ideas that we have for upcoming stuff, because just telling different characters' stories and really analyzing who is this character, and then using music to really tell their story from a perspective that's not maybe necessarily Rogues Among Us. It doesn't necessarily sound like what we sound like, I think it's just because we sounded like this doesn't mean that this character needs us to sound like that still,
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's gonna be really cool. But yeah, what do you think, Kevin? What would you say?
I usually think of it as, for sure, y'all's first 2 albums are definitely prog and Deer Hunter, Coheed, Cambria sounding. But with this last one, it's definitely kind of just transitioned more towards I'd call it just rock.
Yeah.
But with varying influences.
Yeah, definitely varying.
For the first 2, for sure, that's some prog, Coheed stuff like that.
Yeah, I always wanted to say psych rock instead of prog because of that same thing, that towing the line between weird and out there and accessibility. But aside from a few songs here and there, I don't feel like we really fit that either. So
I mean,
yeah.
it's really, when I think of psych rock, I think it means hey, we're a progressive rock band. Psych, we're just a rock band.
I love that.
rather than try to determine the genre myself, I've always been more interested in hearing what other people thought we were.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, we're not, we're at least getting, people say that, we sound a lot like Incubus, or we sound a lot like Deer Hunter, Coheed. I mean, as long as it doesn't sound like we've missed the mark, I feel. If someone came up to us and was like, dude, you guys sound just like Metallica, I'd be like, wow, we never tried to do that whatsoever. So I'm going to have to say you didn't listen to our music. You may have accidentally put on a Metallica album. So.
My proudest moment was there was this elderly gentleman that came up to us after a show and said, You guys give me vibes like King Crimson, and I was like,
That's his heart right there. That's all he's ever wanted.
You felt that.
I was like, I can retire from music now.
Just off of one man,
Yeah.
one man's comments. Could you
Yeah.
imagine if you did that night? We're like a year and a half in. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like, I'm done. That's it. I've done it.
I got what I wanted,
Made it.
guys. Someone said we
It's like
sound like
that.
King Crimson.
It's like that comic book. It's like the comic book guy in The Simpsons. I don't remember what episode or if it was the movie, but he was like, "Life well spent," talking about his life, like living alone and reading comic books.
You can't be the Hulk. I'm the Hulk. Rest in peace, Stanley.
Stanley. Yeah, it's fascinating to me. The groups that I know, that I think are more, that speak to me more, are kind of that way with genre. Not only are they not actively trying to fit inside a box, they typically don't. Because, one track might be like, oh, for something, for continuity, they had to have something that sounded like a standard, like a jazz standard swing tune. And then the next one was a little bit thrashy. But all executed well, and from a story perspective or a musical continuity perspective, it kind of makes sense. Because I think it depends. I don't think that genre is as meaningful as it used to be as a way to describe music, and just in general. Because I think of rock as a very broad thing. It's usually, to me, it means like distortion guitar, drums louder in the mix, a guitar or two, and impressive vocals. Because pop doesn't have really those things necessarily all the time. And it's interesting, and especially like groups with 5 members instead of like 3 or 4. There's 5 different influences that are going to bring, and 5 different sets of music those people are listening to, and 5 different sets of life experiences those people have, and it's, to me, genre can get a little pretentious, I think, when we talk about it. But that, to me, that's what I figured. That's what I had gleaned from listening to the music and knowing you guys like I do. So that's cool. Like, as a band, that's kind of where it's coming from.
I had read this interesting article where they were talking about, is rock music dead? And the person who wrote the article suggested that it's not dead, but it simply is maturing. Mm-hmm. It's evolving and changing. And hopefully we fit that. We fill that, that niche of more maturing rock, less rebellious, grinded out, and more like added sophistication to it, mm-hmm. and maturity.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And to me, like, knowing and accepting that music should sound different, from record to record, or from song to song, or from live performance to live performance. I think knowing and accepting that is sort of a hallmark of a group that does fit that, and is progressing and evolving. Because we've come a long way from Metallica. We're getting to where Metallica is 30 years, 30 years in, like
almost 40 years at this point.
Oh man, like
from the 80s, yeah.
And so I think it might be different if you like with a group like Metallica, if you create or heavily influence a particular genre and say, or if the genre is in the name of your band. But save for those very small things, and if you get huge and go on tour your 3rd year as a band, then different story. But I think on the whole, it's good to constantly be evolving and always be updating your influences and how you create. So the reason I wanted to sort of cover genre, because what I was getting to is getting into the writing process, and for this stuff, just because I'm curious, I'm genuinely curious about it. I would love to go chronologically in order. Starting with the very first thing that y'all released, because we've talked about the identity of the group and how that's evolved. We've talked about how you have individual characters. We've talked also about the stories that we're trying to tell, and I know we covered a little bit of it briefly. But I would love to hear like the influences. I'd love to hear about the actual writing process, like who brings what. How do you actually like share it on a practical level? Like, do you send people emails, or do you like sing into your phone and then put that into a telegram or whatever? So I would love to hear like the sort of origin stories for that stuff in order. That would be fun.
I mean, honestly, I feel like with the first record, I came in with the song Lesser Grandstander with like a melody and kind of just an idea, and I gave it to me and Rob because like him and I had worked on that since maybe like 2012,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken, and it was like we were both really bored and wanted to get back into music. I had just gotten out of college and came up with this lick, which honestly was hilarious because I think I've said it to other people in private, but I used to be obsessed with the movie Donnie Darko, and there is a specific part in the score from Michael Andrews where he did like this little back and forth on piano that I always thought was really nice. I was like, oh, it's really pretty, so I put it in one of my compositions when I was in college, and like it just kept elaborating on it and elaborating on it all the time. I wrote some pieces with it, and then ended up coming out with this, and I was like, oh, it's literally the same lick, we're just going to do it in rock format now.
Mm-hmm.
Let's put it in 4/4 and not be so uptight about it. And so when I brought it to him, he came up with his own idea with it, and I was like, cool. So we pushed that, and then lyrically, like, we had some stuff happen with a friend's family, and we kind of brought inspiration with that, and we pushed through that one, and then it's strange, like, Eugen was kind of like a melting pot of him, like the three of us, like me, Robert, and our old drummer Chris, like our ideas of things, and it was almost like free form for a while. Like it took a long time before we actually settled on how long the certain sections were gonna last, and we just finally figured it out once we got Bradley involved. Like he kind of helped etch out that extra section of it and help it have more form. And once we put it on the record, we realized, okay, well, it can never last forever now. It can only last this long. This is as long as it's going to be. But with the Wolf, I mean, that was all Brad. I think Brad has more input on that one than I do.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I didn't know if you're going to keep going
No.
or if we're going to trade off.
No.
So
We're done.
yeah, I'll just like give my thoughts on the first album. I don't really feel like I did much because I think I was uncomfortable with myself as a musician, which to some degree I still am, as y'all know, and as a person, and just not like confident. So I came in and, I had all these songs written, or at least 3 or 4 that I showed these guys in order to get into the band. And they were like, they sounded excited about them. That was cool. And they wanted to use one. And so we chose the Wolf. And, but the other two, Eugen and LG, apart from like little nuances and, changing the way something was played to get a little bit different texture, I don't think I really contributed like heavily to those 2 tracks. At least the Wolf was I wrote it and we kind of learned it just the way I wrote it, and so that's basically what I brought to the table, was the 1 track for that EP. That's how I felt about it. I don't even feel like we were really like fully riding together at that point. There were some things like the form, and like I said, some nuances, but for the most part, I think they already knew what they wanted from those songs, and they were just open to my ideas. And I felt like they were complete to some degree, and I felt like maybe hesitant to give extra ideas, or maybe I guess I'm speculating about something I don't remember at this point, but maybe I like was too insecure to really hear something different, or if that makes sense. It makes sense to me, so hopefully it makes sense to you.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how I felt like the first album went.
Do you? So I mean, as the shows I've played with y'all, and I want to move on down the line. But when you guys have do you ever play these tunes anymore? Have they changed the way you play them, the way you perceive them? Has that changed? Because that's something I'm sure if we ever have to bust them out, we'll have to learn them and maybe redo them. And if we do that, how are me and Kevin gonna? How would we adjust? Maybe what's on the record to how we would play it live, hypothetically, if we were to do that. I'm just curious how those things have evolved for y'all.
Well, it's interesting because I feel like a song like Eugen, which always has been like a finale for us, it's always been the ending song for every set that we've ever done until maybe the past year or so. It's turned into something we can put in the middle or something we can put at the very beginning, because it used to just be a huge we're gonna use up all of our energy here type of song. And now it's gotten to this point, it's no, we can still do stuff like this and not completely empty the tank. You know, we still have more to do, and we still have, other songs that help us empty the tank a little faster. But I feel like, with songs like Lesser Grandstander, which I've wanted to bring back, but also never wanted to bring back at the same time, because I feel like we've kind of gotten past that sound, is to just tighten it back up and then make it sound like something we'd do today. It's not gonna. I'm not saying we're gonna completely rewrite the song and it's a remaster or anything like that. But it's gonna be more of just how does it make more sense for us today with our new, set of people in there as well. What would make more sense, especially the bass line. I feel like the bass line could not be the same thing over and over and over again.
So, Eugen. I'm glad you brought that up, Mark. In a live setting, Eugen for me has always felt like we're taking the audience on a journey. It's a huge energy tune that has some fluctuations throughout, and so it always feels like a journey from start to end. Kind of has this level of mystery to it at some point as well. And I know, at least for me, whenever we bring in different members and stuff, or if we have people sitting in, because we've had other musicians that weren't a part of the band come in, and we're just do your take, have your take on that part. That's how I really love to approach this group, is I don't like to box in other people. So I want to hear your take on this. And then obviously in rehearsals, we try to tighten it up and get it to where we're all communicating and whatnot. But Eugen has always felt like that one tune where we've done so well with that. We've brought in other musicians, whether they're horn players, other bass players, drummers, whatever. And we've gotten so many different feels just based on who's come in through it. And it always seems like that tune in particular, we've been playing it since day one and we still play it live. It always feels like that tune just resonates really well with our audiences.
Yeah, I agree with Robert. I think if you're talking about older tunes and having new members play them, it goes with what Robert just said, talking about balance. It's about, I don't know. Anyway, John was talking about something earlier, and Robert was talking about something. And my idea is that balance is the key. You got new members. You want to have 5 different people's influences in a song, right, John, for the band sound.
Yep.
But you also don't want to and you don't want to limit anyone's what they want to do. But at the same time, you got to meet somewhere in the middle. So it's this balance of those two ideas, and just it still needs to take you on that journey and be that same song. So I think, yeah.
I do feel like Eugen was a tune that stuck out to me. I'm curious how, Kevin, when you were, like, I guess in the process or maybe auditioning, were there any tunes that stuck out to you? It's like, oh man, I probably got to learn this one. I'm sure they had specific stuff, like we're playing this on the show, so you probably should know this one. But just listening, I like to say that I approached this group as a fan first. And some stuff did stick out to me, and Eugen was definitely one of them. Curious your take on that.
I'm OCD on learning stuff. Like,
Mm-hmm.
send me something, I'll learn it like the record. And then, like, I'll make a chart where it's just like the record. So, especially with the Eugen and Flawless, I just learned those exactly as it's recorded. Well, actually, all of them, I just learned it exactly as it's recorded. That's just, like, my approach to everything that I've been asked to do musically is I'll just learn the record exactly. Mm. And then live, just see what happens, and either it works or doesn't.
I can comment on Kevin's OCD. So we did a cover of Life Will Change from the Persona 5 soundtrack, and it's up on YouTube. So I was like, hey, Kevin, you want to play this? He's like, oh, man, I love that soundtrack. Yeah, sure. So I kept asking him, I'm like, so where's your part, Kevin? We're waiting for your part. And he was like, I just finished transcribing it. I was like, what? He transcribed his whole part before he performed it. So,
which is incredible because, like, I sat there on that same tune with the organ part, and I just, like, kept hitting notes, and I was like, nope, that's not it. And then I was like, I give up, and I looked up online. I was like, oh, those are the chords, cool. And then just started putting it in there. So that to me is awesome that you would go that far to transcribe. And, like, if anything, our professors in colleges would have loved you, especially our jazz instructor. They would have loved you. They would have been like, oh, this guy wants to learn exactly, just all the chords.
It's all the chords.
Stick.
That's awesome. Oh, I think too that's it's a super good quality to have in a group like this, where there's going to be some precision that needs to be there, and there's going to be it has to be accurate for it to be effective. You can't just be like, oh, maybe I'll tune my instrument and then punch it later. I played with...
we're one of those bands. We don't bring tuners to shows. That's tuners are beneath us.
I bring 2 tuners to every show, Bradley. Thank you very much.
If we use any of the tuners, it's the ones that they put on the headstock only. So.
And we leave.
It's the snark,
on so you can hear it.
It's either that or we just go off with, like, we put our cell phones next to the amp so it can pick it up on the iTuner.
Professionalism. We're a professional band.
That is true.
We also don't use the pedals because clearly, like, you hear us. It's like, wah.
Right.
We play the tuning song a lot.
A lot.
Tuning songs.
Probably one of our best.
That's the right string too. Oh shit!
But I will say that after hearing their stuff and learning their stuff for those gigs, when they got into the writing process, I kind of thought this was a straight prog band. So I thought we were going to sit there and be like, okay, we're going to do 3 measures of 3/4, and then 1 measure of 2/2, and then we're going to do 11, and then all of a sudden count it off and just go from there. So I was kind of worried about that. But, like, the writing process, like, after listening, was totally different than what I expected.
Yeah.
I thought it would be.
And now he's bored.
Now he's bored. And so far, it's been more of like, hey, so, what did you guys come up with this week? Did you come up with a lick by any chance? Yeah, I did. Here's what it is. And then we sit there for... Yeah, we sit there for like 2 hours hitting that.
Play the lick.
That's the only lick I know.
But it was always funny because, like, sometimes even writing, like, the new stuff, like writing the Jason Valdez stuff, the guys would just be like, all right, Mark, just go ahead and write something to that. And it's like, I don't know what chords you're playing. Oh,
what chord?
Hold on.
Yeah,
and then, like, they come back, they would come back to it.
So that might be why this happened to me a lot. But at first, beside this album, I think was primarily written by Robert, and he did a fantastic job, and we all just kind of like helped him flesh it out and take it where it needs to go and talk about the characters, like I said earlier, and all that stuff. But before that, whenever I would bring stuff to the guys, they would literally just like, Flawless is a good example. Like, I think it was Flawless. I had this melody, and then Mark was like, okay. And he played a very different melody in the same spot. And I was like, what the fuck? Like kind of mad, because then I have to rewrite my part, and Robert too, I brought in From Within, to the group. And I mean, I had a very different version, so we totally rewrote it. And we went by the chords. So we wrote the chords, and then Robert came up with these really cool melodies, and I'm listening. I'm like, none of my chords fit what he's doing now. So I had to go in and change my part. I think that song, I changed it 3 times to fit what Robert's new idea was. So there's a lot of rewriting involved. And
I want to say, to be more specific, it fit. It's just Bradley didn't like how it fit.
Yeah, you're not wrong, because like wrong notes are just color tones, right? Okay, that's fine. But I wanted to enforce them. You know what I mean? Like I wanted them to be like, not sound wrong, but sound like, because the melodies were beautiful. Like if you listen to that song, they're really well, like just really beautiful, and the chords didn't, kind of bring them to life. So I felt like I had to redo it. And then same thing with Flawless. Like there was one point where I was like, guys, I feel like I have to rewrite this again. And they told me not to. And I was like, no, I have to, and then I did it, and they were like, okay, that's great.
Just to be clear, this is Brad.
Yeah.
This
is my, this is my version.
This is
of
Brad.
But honestly, and it was funny with Flawless, because I remember you came out like fully fleshed out, and I was like, dude, this is cool. The lyrics are really good. I think like maybe there's a couple spots we could repeat lyrics instead, and just no, this is what it is. And I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna repeat these lyrics regardless, just so you know. And I think we've always had that type of relationship where like we love what we do with each other, like we love like the stuff that we come up with, but then also aren't afraid to tell each other like, well, here's what I'm gonna do. Exactly. Also, fuck you.
Well, I think that was a learning journey for me. Like, learning how to work with a group and having your own ideas, and acknowledging that, like, when you bring a song to a group, that it's not gonna stay that way.
It's no longer your song.
Yeah, and I knew that conceptually, but it feels different when it changes so much. And so I definitely have grown a ton because of this group.
Yeah,
well, working with a group, you're opening yourself up to criticism, to change, to dealing with all sorts of personalities, and sometimes conflict arises from that. But the thing is, you're also getting all the benefits of it, which is the varied influences, the different ideas. And I'm gonna tell you, like I know Brad said that I wrote a lot of this latest album, dude. I wrote like a basic foundation, and like all of it changed, and for the better, and I was very glad to receive all the input on that.
And that's always been the great thing, is that like it took us maybe like a year or so to kind of figure that part out, of just like that there will be conflict in what we do, but really it's like once you put your ego aside and you start to be open to the criticism and understand that it's not criticism towards you as a personal person, it's criticism towards, things that could be better, because we all had the same idea of trying to be the best that we could be musically, or as people. So we stopped fighting so much about it, because for a long time we'd fight all the time. I'd get my feelings hurt all the time. It's like, well, my lyrics aren't good enough for you, then maybe I'm not good enough for this band, or maybe I could just do it on my own. Like, just stupid bullshit like that. But over time, like, you start to realize it's like, no, they're trying to bring out the best in you. And
well, I think that's actually still a process, is letting go. But I think we've grown into a place where, like, I don't think it was ever like, my ideas are shit. It was more like I had a vision, and then now it's more like I'm excited to see where this goes with everybody's vision. At least me personally. But what I was really trying to say is that like I still think we have like little things here and there, but it's like we know it's going to be better tomorrow, and like we love and trust each other, for real. And so it's yeah, I don't know.
The people in this room don't reach the level of toxicity. It's usually pretty constructive.
Wait, in your room or?
My dog is never toxic. She's very supportive.
My dog is always toxic.
Especially your gas.
Oh,
That's what I mean.
We can talk
Yeah, I'll
about
say that,
toxicity, y'all. I'm just saying we could talk about toxicity.
Well, I'll say that, like, after being in a few bands from it, like, every band I've been in, I'm, like, the third or fourth bass player. So, like, coming into this group again as, like, a third or something, or fourth bass player, I'll say that, like, y'all aren't too toxic. I've been in some pretty toxic situations. So, like, yeah, there's no toxicity at all. There's gaslighting, though.
dude, and there's multiple different kinds of gaslighting, but that's a different. That's a lovely, charming gaslighting.
It's all in fun.
Yeah. Dude, I've had the same experience, man. I'm always like the fifth drummer, and I come in, and 100% of the time it's like, yeah, our first three drummers were like, one guy was like 80, and then the next guy was always on drugs, and then one guy was 80 and on drugs, and so we're in a really bad place. And I was, it's like, we really need someone that will not be on fire when they come, and I'm like,
Yeah, that's how mine has been too. It's like, look, if you just show up sober and on time.
That's the best that we can do at this point.
Yeah.
But I think it sometimes it works with people that just kind of show up and do the thing and then fuck off. But it can also be, I think it's different, and I think if there's that like sort of special sauce when it's that there's people invested in what's going on, and regardless the instrument you play, if you're going to be a team player, you're a team player, and so that's interesting. Was there a point in time, because I know it's really tricky sometimes to sort of pinpoint it, but was there a time between the first and second collection that you released that there was a marked change in the process? Like, Bradley, I know you were saying you didn't feel very involved in the first one necessarily. Was there a time like, oh yeah, like the second we released that first record and started working on the second one, it was different? Or was it, how did that process evolve? The dynamics of things, did they, was it a quick change? Was it, the entire process of the album into recording, or how did that kind of work out for y'all?
For me personally, I don't think there's ever been a defining moment. I think it's just been a really difficult journey for me personally to actually accept that people value my input. Mm-hmm. And also an equally difficult journey. I don't know, but definitely like having to face that people value my input, like that has a weird connotation, having to face it. Like it was a real challenge for me, and it still is to some degree today, and like we give each other shit all the time. And one of my things is, I don't know my parts because I like to play different shit, and so sometimes I still get like in my head about that shit, but I've grown to the point where like I know these guys, like they don't have any hard feelings towards me, and we trust each other enough to where like if they did, I know that they would tell me something, so no, there was never a single moment. It's always been a constant kind of struggle to get to like where I am, and I'm still kind of like progressing in that sense, kind of still learning that I'm not a piece of shit.
That yes. So
I kind of made it like psychological. I'm sorry, but I think that's part of what it is for me.
That there's it's easier to see stuff that's practical. You can hear changes in music. That's easier to discern. But I love talking about this because I deal with it a lot. I mean, I work in composition, music composition, and all sorts of genres and all sorts of levels of that. I deal with something called imposter syndrome all the time.
Yeah.
What I do, I am not worthy to do. When I have 2 degrees sitting on my wall that say very much the opposite, and I have people that I care for and adore and respect their opinion, and they've said, I love working with you as doing what you're doing. And I do think that it's a constant struggle for creative people. And, like I said, the practical stuff I think is a little bit easier to talk about, but I would love to hear everyone's take on, imposter syndrome. Do you ever feel like that?
I definitely can understand the imposter syndrome issue. I've had issues depending on what parts that we're writing. So I feel like there was a point when I wrote for Lesser Grant Center for the lyrics, like I was in my head a lot harder than it should have been.
Mm-hmm.
It was, it's the first time you're coming up with stuff for the band, and then none of that, but like the story behind it was pretty graphic and gruesome to deal with, and then Eugen wasn't any easier having to deal with it, like seeing these things happen to my friends, and but as time went on, like it started to get a little easier and easier to deal with mentally, and not feel like I'm completely draining myself artistically or emotionally, and like this past album, honestly, may have been one of the funnest ones, mostly because I got to act like a person who was somewhere in high regard all the way down to this point of humble, well, like becoming modest and humble, and
Mm-hmm.
and trying to humble yourself in the process, and it was interesting, and I've never had to play a character in that regard of like someone who's super high confident and just knows what he wants and I'm gonna get it and this and that. I've never had to deal with that personally, so it was a lot of fun this time around doing it. But the imposter syndrome, man, like it's so wild that people don't realize like how real that can hit. It seems it doesn't seem like a big deal at first, but then once you're actually hitting it and you don't understand, why do I get the praise that I get for this? Am I really as good as I think, or as others think? And it's like trying to take on the pressure of like living up to everybody else's expectations, when in reality there are no expectations. It's just you having expectations on yourself and understanding that not everything's going to be a banger, not everything's going to work, but when it does work, it's going to fucking work. It's going to be a big deal. So
Yep.
Yeah, I think part of it is like the music training that we have, and when you hear yourself back, you've learned to listen really critically, like beyond the scope of the average listener, I would say, by far. And so when you hear something like it's, you have that like instilled or learned skill to want to improve yourself, and then you also have the ear to hear that it was like not what you wanted to do, and then all of a sudden you're in this place where you don't feel good about it, and yeah.
Honestly, that's sorry. I'm gonna say this real quick. The really interesting thing between the three of us that we have to deal with is the fact that when we went to school for things, we were always told how to perform or what to write, and in a certain way, because whatever we came up with may have been good to us,
Mm-hmm.
but to them it's like, well, here's how you can make it better. For Brad, it's like when you played your piece and it's like, this is the best of my abilities to play it. Pluggy could easily be like, okay, but that's still not good enough to my level. And at the end of the day, yeah, he might be, the person in charge or this and that, but like he is not the authoritative figure of all, saxophone players. Kyle Kindred was not the authoritative figure for all composition in the world. You know, it was for us right then and there. And so the thing that I wish that they would have taught us at the end of the day is understanding whatever is the best that you think makes sense. If that's the way you interpret the music, then that's the way you interpret it. If that's the way that you wrote it because this is how it makes sense to you, then that's how you wrote it. But to make it feel like we're always grasping for people's gratitude and appreciation and always trying to do that, it's made us kind of a slave to that system. So now, like, when we're in this type of realm, we're doing it to our peers and less to the audience, because we are thinking in our head, like, the audience doesn't understand, our peers could understand better than our audience will. And the worst part is that majority of the time, our peers aren't even listening.
Yeah.
It's the audience that's listening. Sometimes our peers are in the audience, but 9 times out of 10 they aren't. You know, we're trying to be better than the band that played 10 minutes before us, or trying to make us look so good that the band after us can't hold a candle to us.
Yeah.
But that's the issue. That's the issue, is that we're going after the wrong. We can sometimes get stuck in the wrong ideal of, like, you know, what we really should be seeking, you know.
Yeah.
I don't think I necessarily follow that, but I also don't have the college background you guys have.
It's like PTSD for us.
But
I feel that way.
It really is.
kind of reining in, going back to the question though. The big difference between Eugen and Analysis Paralysis is we actually had a group for Analysis Paralysis. Eugen was still a bunch of individuals, just, hey, I wrote this song, bring it to the group, we ship it. Analysis Paralysis, we had a bass player, we had a drummer that came in about like a quarter way through the writing process, and we all developed the songs together. I know there's a lot of like, there was a lot of conflict that happened halfway through. And even during the recording process, but I mean, you know, every group has to deal with stuff like that.
Sure.
But I mean, that was like the big difference, and that was kind of for me where I felt like I could see gradually, like, we're starting to like solidify who we are as a group. And even with the changes in membership over time, like there's still like this foundation, and I feel like that foundation is still growing as we try to find the people who like become the glue of this group.
You know, honestly, it's interesting because you had mentioned that with Analysis Paralysis, but like, I still remember the day that, you know, when Nathan came and listened to Flawless for the first time after being in school and, you know, doing his masters and stuff, and he came in and he heard, and it's like, that's not what I expected it was going to be.
You're talking about Maladjusted.
Yeah, Maladjusted, sorry, yeah. And I remember, like, it really threw me back to college, because in reality, I remember having a professor do the same thing. He asked me to write a piece for him, and he said, these are the things you need to hit, and this is what I'm expecting. So I was like, cool, you gave me the box, I'll play in the box. And then I gave it to him, and I performed it for him, and he said, that's not what I expected it to be, and I don't like it. And it just reminded me of that, because in reality, at the same time, I asked him at the end of it, I was like, did I hit all the things you were asking for? Yes. I mean, technically, yeah. I was like, then I did my job. And that was the thing, was that Nathan had come in with Maladjusted and gave us, you know, he gave us a box, because he told us, I'd like for this to happen and these type of things. And then we did it, but we did it our way, the way that we like to do things. And it took us a while before the 3 of us, you know, or the 4 of us at the time, had kind of grouped together to figure out, oh, this is what it would be cool, and coming up with different ideas and chunks, you know, towards the end and stuff. And he didn't like it. And it's like, that's okay, because someone else will like it. You don't have to like it. Sometimes there have been songs that we've played that I don't like, but I know it's not for me. It's for everybody.
Yeah, I think a big thing I've learned is that thing too, letting go. Letting go. Like, maybe it's ego. I don't know. It probably is. It could just be the fact that we care, you know, which might be, you know, that might be ego too. But anyway, you know, just letting go of what you think, you know, what you think about it. Because it's not up to you to judge it, you know? Like you wrote it, you did the performance, and that's all you can do. And I think I've taken that into like a bigger part of my life, and I think that's my journey now. Is just like you can only do what you can do.
Yeah.
You know, and same thing in the music realm. You can only do what you can do. You can't make somebody like it. You can't make it perfect. And no matter how well you perform it, how well you record it, you hear it a year later, and there's going to be something you have a new idea because you've grown, and it's just like anything else. So yeah.
Hopefully, it's easy to fall into a thing where it's not that. You just like, well, I wrote that a year ago. It sounds fine, it's selling copies or whatever. But no, that's definitely something that should always be in consideration, and it is hard. And I think that's one thing that all musicians can get into, whether it's a heavily writing thing or just performing. Like the whole idea of entertainment is very subjective. So like it's got to be for you. I think one thing I will say about that, I think my goal is to. Sometimes it's to entertain. That's like an overarching goal, but I know it's not really a practical one because most of that process, most of that transaction is actually out of my control. But I do have a goal of, I want to play it well, and not to the point where, oh God, I missed a note, I'm useless, I'm worthless. Performance-wise, that's never really been the case for me. I'm like, I missed a note, I don't care.
Right.
Like on drum set, oh, I missed a fill or I drop a stick. I got like 300 sticks. It's fine. It's whatever. Mm-hmm. Composition, it's a little bit different, and I've had to work into the writing process. I'm like, well, I finished this, and there's been marching band stuff I write. I do a lot of marching band, especially this time of year, and I finish it, and I'm like, this is exactly what they asked for. They've given high praise. I hate this a lot, and I'm never listening to it again.
Yeah. You're just done with it at that point.
Yeah.
I think Emma Watson, is that Hermione? Emma Watson,
Hermione.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. She was talking about the Harry Potter movies, and she was talking about like, it's like looking at middle school photos except of your work or something like that, And that's I think that's like exactly what we're talking about.
Oh yeah, because they were children when they filmed that.
Yeah.
That's so weird.
And they grew over 10 films? 10 films. Like that's huge. That's a huge, grouping of things to do. I mean, yeah, you literally do grow up in that sense. It's like watching, like Full House. Those kids grew up into that.
Yeah, it's easier to see what she's saying, but I think it applies equally for us as musicians and etc.
Okay, I agree.
Yeah. Well, I am curious too about some of the practicality of it. So once you guys had the core group that was there, what was some of the practical stuff like? I mean, I know some of you had you brought in like a structure or a chord progression or a lick or whatever. How do you all sort of share it and collaborate? Was it all done live in person? I mentioned I've sent people like little voice messages before. I'm like, hey, what do you think about this melody for this song that I'm writing, or what do you think of this lick for the end of the snare solo? So I'm curious how y'all kind of handled that in a practical sense.
I mean, it's a combination of live and demoing out, sending stuff back and forth. I know before we were very limited on our knowledge and practicality of technology, so a lot of it was done in person, but as we've grown, it seems like we're becoming more and more focused on the demo side of things. So, we'll send tracks back and forth. And I know me and Mark specifically, like at the very beginning, that is almost exclusively how we wrote because he lived in Hawaii. Yep.
That's right. You were fancy.
I was fancy.
Yeah, I think. You want to go ahead, Mark?
No, I mean, no, you're good.
Okay. I think, in my opinion, it's different for every song. you know, I think Robert has a point about lately it's been more demo focused, but I also think that we've had huge success with these full day writing sessions that we'll do every once in a while, where we'll meet up at the practice space 2 days in a row for 8 to 12 hours. I don't know if we do 2 days in a row every time, but I think we did at least once for analysis paralysis. And I mean, just talking about all day you spend it writing. And so that's really helpful for some things. And then, you know, other songs like, you know, Flawless, we did the words first, and then I think Robert came up with some chords, and then I changed the chords and put the vocals in, and then Mark came back and changed the vocals, and we added sections and stuff like that. So that one was kind of the opposite. We started with the poetry first, whereas a lot of times we'll start with one riff, or we'll start, like with this last album, with an overall story and how does the song need to feel. You know, how does song 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5 need to feel at that moment in the story, and what is the story, and then we take everything from there. So in those cases, lyrics are usually the last thing to go. But I think basically the answer, from my perspective, is that it's different almost every time.
That's cool. I didn't know about like a marathon writing session. That's, whew. I mean, I've been there. I've had to turn out a marching show in 2 days, so I've been there. I know a lot of really cool stuff can come out of that time where you set aside time. Like, I'm gonna sit here and be creative. Do y'all write stuff down? Are you a chart kind of people, or do you just like, you know, record it and listen to it later? That's kind of a small thing because it doesn't really matter necessarily. I'm just kind of curious.
I think some of us are and some of us aren't.
Yeah, I was gonna say I feel like this time around, this last album, we actually got super into being more structurally sound in comparison.
Sure.
Before it's just been like, oh, it's already put together. Let's just give it to each other and start building. So the skeleton was always there. So this time, in general, we had to generate everything, and it's like, well, the best way we can do it is just like how Brad said. It's like, here's what the story is. How do we fit the story into the music, and then what sections are we breaking off into what, and what is it doing in the story to influence what's happening in the music in comparison? You know?
And,
I remember
what musical tools can we use to captivate or to elicit this emotion or this feeling or this, you know, moment in the story.
Yeah.
I remember at one point Brad like made folders for everyone that had like all of our tunes written, like everything
Nice.
transcribed. And he gave it out to everybody.
I don't know where mine is.
That's something that I would do. That's some nerd stuff. Which
But it needs to be done, you know.
I agree.
If it works, it works. If it didn't work, then, you know.
It was helpful
okay.
for like one rehearsal.
For a few rehearsals.
Hey man, that's better than no rehearsal.
I mean, it was helpful until like Mark said, people started losing their folders.
Yeah.
dude,
That was the issue.
I taught middle school band. I'm familiar with the phenomenon.
I swear that's not gaslighting.
It's funny how shit don't change, you know. Sitting here years later, well out of middle school, still be losing shit.
I don't know where it
Over that
is.
heart.
I never got it.
Dude, in school I was the worst because I knew where my stuff was. I just refused to bring it.
No, I am very bad about exactly that. Like, I will forget everything. They know. John knows too. Shit.
All right, that's what iPads are for. I'm just saying.
Dude, these kids nowadays, they have it so damn easy. They carry around a laptop or a tablet or some shit. Like, I had all my books in my backpack because nobody had time to go to a locker. So it was like, dude, I had everything with me at all times. So,
Lisa Frank
like,
up in this bitch.
dude, I carried that
Lisa
big
Frank,
backpack everywhere. That's why I got thighs of steel now.
I don't know about that.
That's why. Okay.
Yeah.
Eyes of fucking bread pudding.
Brad pudding.
Yeah, Brad pudding.
Rose actually. No, but I mean, but that's the thing. Like, to me, it's like it just depends on if you cared enough to make time for it. Because like, you and I went to the same schools. Like, to me, it's funny to hear you say like, "Oh, I didn't have time to go to the locker and this and that. I'd rather just carry all my books." It's like, no, you could make the time to go to your locker. You had 5 minutes.
Called out.
You know, like it wasn't like you walked half a mile to the next class. It was sometimes a few doors down or whatever, and maybe your locker
Was
would
it
go
3
further
doors
away.
down?
Hey, you know what? I had to deal with certain people at school. So
Mark?
like whenever like I'd be going down the hallway trying to get to my class. I'm like, maybe I have time to get to a locker. Here comes Mark. Oh, hey Rob, did you hear about that? I'm like, oh,
Did you see
God.
this video?
And then
Back in the day when we had that,
walking
so-
down the hallway and Chase and all these other people, kidney check, pop, punch you in the kidney.
To be fair, you used to scoop my man boobs, so don't act like you were innocent of this at all.
I was innocent, always innocent.
There's the gaslighting.
Dang, y'all.
That's how quickly it goes that
Yeah,
way.
Fantastic.
Waller High School, man.
Waller High School.
You have nothing better to do than terrorize the other students.
Rob was a bully.
I
Zero
was not a
tolerance,
bully,
Rob.
sir.
Not a bully.
I was
He
not a bully.
Boop boop.
He was not.
So I do. Is there? Hmm. What's sort of writing wise, like music wise? You know, there's other stuff I have curious about, but what musically is sort of on the agenda next? I know I make the agendas, but I'm talking about it in a more broad sense. You know, what are we working on? What's a new Rogues tune going to look like in, you know, whenever the next one? What's the next one?
I don't think that we know the answer to that. I think we wrote out some demos, but we haven't touched the character chart in a little bit. We've been kind of regrouping because of COVID, and I think it's going to depend on what we decide the next story or album looks like, if we follow the story or not. Because we had planned to do, you know, Jason Valdez as one character in this universe and this one story. And our next plan was to do another character and their perspective and their story and their journey in that universe. And that could sound entirely different than anything we've ever done. Depending on what we decide that character or that story needs musically. But we're also, I'm not sure that that's the next project that's going to come out. We might do something before that. We might do something totally different before that. And I don't think that there's a way to tell someone what's going to happen next, because I think it depends on what happens in that room when we write, or in that room when we write a demo, and in that room when someone listens to it, and, you know,
What they're influenced
what happens
by.
in your head when you hear it back with
Yeah.
what they've added.
And that's the other thing too. It's like who's gonna be influenced by something new that's going on in present time that could influence what we sound like in the future. Majority of the time, I mean, so much stuff is coming out even during, you know, all the stuff that's going on right now. That, you know, maybe last year when I was listening to the demos or trying to write demos, it's like, oh, I probably wouldn't have done that nowadays.
Yeah.
You know, things can change within a few months. Things can change definitely within a couple of years, but for sure within a month.
Yeah.
I know for me, it like the last EP, Subscribe, like, sorry, Jason Valdez, a lot of that stuff that I wrote out was at least very emotionally influenced for me. I was going through like a big rough patch, so it was literally just me and my guitar. So I channeled so much into it that at some point after all of that was channeled out and it was done, I was like dried up musically. It was like having to find like what influences me now, because I got all that out of my system and it was done. And so it's kind of like a journey of finding yourself again. And I'm generally starting to find that in its own may be an inspiration for something new. So who knows? Maybe I'll have something new for everyone soon.
Yeah. True that.
Well, that I think it's I have a having so many friends in the industry in the music industry. I've kind of wanted to talk about the whole COVID thing, because it's literally affecting everyone, because human beings are susceptible to disease and health things. So it literally affects everyone. But I've been kind of following what's going on with the music scene, but I would love to talk about it. So like how it's kind of affecting you. And there's a lot of facets to it. I know for me, and I didn't think it would at first, but I think some of this stuff compounded. Like it affected me obviously financially, which that one's pretty easy because if we're gigging musicians, we're no longer gigging musicians. I was teaching. I lost a bunch of students because it wasn't safe for them to come out. So there was that. Also, as all of that stuff wore on. Losing money is emotionally taxing, which meant that the students I did have, I wasn't teaching them very well. And so I was thinking, I can't keep doing this. I'm gonna try to sell some more compositions, but I can't. And there was a time I literally just completely retracted. I went into snail mode. And so it started, with this practical thing. Money is more scarce now. I have to be a little bit more discerning with how I'm spending, what kind of stuff I'm doing, and also like how I'm spending time to make money. But then that devolved all the way into like I wasn't on social media. I didn't return phone calls or text messages. Bradley called me like 4 times, and I was just like, not in the mood. I can't do it.
I was literally just worried about him too.
Yeah, and looking back on it, I've sort of recovered a little bit from that point. But I would have been concerned about me too. And there was people that I cared for that were very, very, very similar. So, I would love to sort of hear and maybe commiserate a little bit about, what's going on, how your lives have changed practically and, emotionally. We're all here. I think we're all probably at least at a certain point where, we can sit and talk. I know we talk with each other a lot. We're comfortable and familiar enough with each other, but I'd love to hear how you're doing with all this nonsense.
Well, for me, my life has almost like not changed at all. In fact, I went from like being bored half the time with only work and then like playing guitar here or there to now it's like I have maybe like 5 minutes to myself each day.
Wow.
Sounds like a change then.
I mean, yeah, that's the big change is I got more work, more production. And I mean, it's great. Like it's really helped a lot of my emotional instabilities because I don't have as much time up here. It's more like focused. Yeah. And so I built a computer, and since then I've just been helping with production, video, audio. I've been working with, I'm starting a Dungeons and Dragons YouTube channel. And like, nice. I mean, it's this whole COVID thing. It's terrible. It's a tragedy. And like, I wish that the individuals in this world would take responsibility for themselves and their communities and decide to be more responsible with their health and the healths of others. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it's kind of given me a second to refocus myself.
Yeah.
And help our group refocus and my new projects focus.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in now because I know Mark has probably the most to say. because he works in the music industry, and I know. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, for me, you know, I lost a lot of students like you, John, and it was hard. Like, I mean, I can't get unemployment. I didn't get the stimulus checks, you know. So, like you said, it was very emotionally taxing, and it was easy to get into this dark place. But I think that, like, at the same time, it kind of it makes me think about, like, what can I do now?
Right.
You know, because a lot of those things are out of my control. And like, it's easy to feel sorry for yourself when you're broke as fuck, like, you know, really broke, and you can't go see the people you love, and you can't go hang out at the bar or whatever. You can't go to a show. You can't do anything you want to do. But, you know, there's
Well, you
also
shouldn't.
like all this.
Yeah, you shouldn't. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. I guess in my head, like, just
Right. Well, you're
you know.
a compassionate person, so
right. But you know, and there, it's easy to think about yourself and your situation when, you know, my biggest COVID scare was like my girlfriend and her family, and they were okay.
Yeah.
You know, I had to get tested and everything, and I was worried about my family, but we were all fine. And I know that's not the same for a lot of people. So it's easy to feel down about it. So I think I've figured out. I don't know if it's this learning process that I keep talking about, that I'm just, like, for me personally, it's kind of like Robert was saying, more like looking to the future, getting out of that negative space, and now I'm just like focused on what can I do now to fix my situation, what can I do now to improve myself for tomorrow, and that kind of stuff. So I'm feeling like overall positive generally. Not that I don't have my down moments, but looking forward to the next thing for me, in spite of the ease with which you can fall into that pit, and yeah.
it is one of the things that comes from this particular tragic ongoings is that a lot of us are sort of able to medicate, I guess is a good word for it, things in our life that are really not sustainable. If we're at a job we hate, man, okay, I'm going to go drink every night. And I'm going to hang out with people. I'm going to go drink with people that I like to get rid of that negative feeling that I've had. I hate my job. I hate my family. I hate my wife and my kids. So I'm going to go drink every single night. And, you know, unfortunately, it's not great for everyone. It's not a moment of growth for everyone. Those particular extreme circumstances, probably not. But, you know, if you're unhappy at a job, maybe, and you can't go out and socialize, and you really sit and think, we've been forced to sit and be like, is this sustainable? Is this something that I've grown past, but I haven't been able to practically move out of? And that sort of forced introspection, I think, is making a lot of people realize there's things in their life that they need to, and that they can improve. You know, and some people are finding, wait, I'm way more creative and entrepreneurial than I really thought I was. I'm going to start an Etsy shop where I make mittens for hamsters. But they never would have done that if they were still working, you know, 46 hours a week at Best Buy making $6 an hour. Like, you know, it can be a time of growth, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, because that's, you know, a lot of people are like, well, I have all this time now, I should be growing. But that's not really how life works either. But it is, I think, an opportunity for some folks. I mean, I've learned how to stream and operate some video equipment, and you know, it's still a process, but I've learned that I can do it with stuff I already had.
I think a good word is catalyst. You know,
Yeah.
like, it's been a catalyst for growth for some people. And I think that just, like, that's definitely at least my situation. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
What about from Kevin? I'm gonna know.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's a gigging bass player?
True that.
What's your day-to-day life? Is it, similar to how you had it? I know you probably had to take some time off, but what's it like?
Um, it's been different.
Yeah.
Had to adapt to certain things differently. I mean, like
Wow.
what you had mentioned, I definitely went through like a 2 month phase where I just like completely like checked out and stuff. Just like fear with the unknown
Mm-hmm.
kind of set in. I guess on the bright side though, I have had to like learn how to record myself and actually have the sound. That's I guess been a plus. And like doing like Zoom and stuff like that, and having to do a lot of like remote recording has been, I guess, a plus because I never actually did that. I mean, went like 5 years, never actually get doing that. I just got by with the whole live thing.
Yeah.
So like actually had to learn how to record and do all that. So that's been, I guess, the positive out of it.
Well, that's good. I mean, I never take it for granted that people are going to find are going to be able to find positive out of unfortunate situations, but that's good. And those skills, those that being able to record yourself and the whole platform of Zoom and the idea of like remote communication that has to be a little bit more involved than a text message or a phone call. Those are lifelong skills. The platform may change, the minutia of it might, but man, like I've never wanted to record myself before, and now I've gotten over that part, and that's gonna last me forever. Uh, Being able to record myself, like have a computer and organize all my files, like also a huge thing to learn. So that's awesome. Um, I I'm I've seen I do want to get to Mark because I think like Bradley was saying his thing is probably I think the thing I'm most interested in. But I have seen what day is it? It's September 10th right now, the day we're recording this. I've already seen well, it's Texas. Parts of Texas never closed down.
Yeah.
Parts of the country still have not closed down. But I am noticing that some restaurants are now inviting live musicians or having them more
Yeah, there
consistently.
are, but like they're like up at College Station, their band's playing those bars and stuff. Like they've been playing there since like July. And
Yeah.
then there are some people are still gigging with, despite the restrictions and stuff. Really, I don't really feel doing that right now on some of those, on some level with that,
Hmm.
because I don't really want to take that risk if I can just do the remote thing right now. I'm more comfortable doing that in a bar where people aren't wearing a mask and I don't know what I can bring home and affect the people around me.
Yeah.
Kind of more of my concern about the whole like live gaming, because I know it's been going on since at least early July, but yeah.
Well, it's freaky, man, because if you're playing gigs, you probably are not covered by health insurance.
Yeah,
And
very much.
for me, I was thinking I've had a couple of like, hey, you want to come play drums at this restaurant? I'm like, you want to pay my insurance premiums
Yeah,
for
what's that, hazard pay?
yeah? Because even when I was working full time, I couldn't even dream of being able to afford any sort of health coverage. And so that's another huge thing that it contributed to the practicality of it. It's like I'm not going to go teach in person. There's no way you can get me around anyone under 45 years of age on purpose because they don't know how to take care of themselves, and maybe they come by that honestly. But I'm not going to go teach a 6-year-old right now, especially because no one's following protocol. No one's
Yeah,
washing their hands. No one's wearing a mask, especially at first. Like I'm absolutely not going to put myself in there because I have no recourse if something were to
yeah,
happen. I live with my mother right now. She's in her mid 60s. I might be
same,
fine.
same.
And there's absolutely no way I could forgive myself if something that I could have prevented got her sick. There's no way. I would never get over that. And so it's not worth it to me. I love what I do. I love music. I love teaching. I love performing. I love writing. There's no way I would trade my mother's health, safety, well-being, happiness, or life for that. It's not going to happen. So
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt. And got offered some stuff back in July at a gig, and it was like, look, my health and the health of my family around me, that's not worth like the $100 gig.
yeah,
That totally isn't worth it. That totally outweighs it. It's like the long-term repercussions of that.
Yeah, my dad's 70, so I feel that. I also have a story. I don't know if you want to edit it out or not, but I had a cough one week, and I knew it was allergies because, like, I had mowed the lawn, and I have really bad allergies. I knew it was allergies, but just to be safe, I stayed away from people, and I called out of work one day.
mm-hmm.
And I teach, and they make us wear masks and all that. And to be honest, nothing has really changed for me except the mask wearing. I always am very conscious of washing my hands. I sanitize them, especially after I use my credit card or at a gas station, especially. Like, I hate that. I always feel dirty when I use that stuff. So I've always done that. Nothing's really changed for me. I'm still OCD about germs, which I think most people are now getting to that level, right?
Yeah.
I just have to wear a mask now, and that's fine. But I lost students that day because I didn't come in and they wanted in-person lessons. And I was just like, man, I was trying to do a good thing, and now I'm losing money, which I'm not making because, whatever.
No, that's a practical consideration, and it's one of those things that it's like, okay, is what I'm doing sustainable? If I take one day off and I actually lose future income for that, I think that everyone should always be conscientious of what they're doing. And if you listen to this 2 years later and you're wondering, man, do I want to keep teaching? And a lot of people ask themselves that question, say, absolutely, I would never do anything else. And awesome. But if you didn't ask yourself that question, you just kind of go through blindly. But for me, I asked myself that question, and they were like, if this is going to be your only income, is it worth it? Is the risk worth it? And I said, it's not for me. I love teaching. I love helping people get better at music and, become better people through musical training. But, I decided it wasn't worth the risk for me right this second. When things change, maybe different. But I think it's always good to scrutinize that. And it sucks but we definitely lost students. That's it's when something happens like that. That income is volatile in that way, and month to month it can even still be volatile. So I don't know. That's why people sack groceries and pour coffee, I guess. But yeah, that's totally relevant. So, Mark, you work in the biz, man. I think you work in show business and music, live events, venues, and that. So, and I know that you've sort of been able to talk about this because it's interesting for people, and it's a very broad thing, and it's public, and I think it's probably more scrutinized than really anything other than the restaurant industry. So what's your life been like, man?
I mean, it's been done. There's been nothing to do. The live event industry is completely destroyed at this point. It's there's nothing that can really happen. I've seen some really good things happen here and there. I've seen some production companies make really smart decisions and kind of pivot into different directions. I've seen, one staging company pivot into being like, hey, if you need to make medical triage, here we go. We can create our stages and fully power this whole thing, this 1,500, patient medical temporary hospital. Mm-hmm. And we can do it for this, and that, that can create jobs, but it's short term, right. In reality, because it's once it's built and it's picked up and it's put together, you're not going to be there to maintain. it's going to be running by itself. You might have an electrician around, but that's about it. But with everything else, live music wise, like it's been done. Like I've seen a lot of cancellations or postponements of a lot of concerts and festivals. I work both in multiple venues in Houston and also like in festivals around the country. And I still remember, and I know the guys saw like me kind of lash out quite a bit, when it first started coming down, because they weren't being hit just yet.
Yeah.
It was like mid-March, and I remember like I was done with, Jill Scott, and the next day I get a text or an email saying, hey, so this Friday's shows are canceled, and Saturday's shows are canceled, and Sundays are too. So you don't have anything to do. Maybe we can come back in a couple weeks. And the next thing I know, I see a couple weeks to maybe towards the end of the month to hopefully by June we should be back. And then now it's like, I'm sorry, we have to cancel every single fucking thing.
Yeah.
And it was hard, like I remember I was still a week and a half before I was supposed to leave for Vegas to be there on April 1st to start working. And I still hadn't gotten confirmation about my flight to be out there.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone was kind of it was just all low rumblings and nobody really having an answer. And then it was the week before I was supposed to leave, I got an email saying, I'm sorry, like we have to cancel this event. And, I'm like, okay, that I get it. And then 2 days later, I get another email from another festival saying, hey, we're also canceling ours. Like, we're going to have to do it next year. And I remember telling the guys, and I felt really bad, at the time, because the guys are like, dude, it's not that big of a deal. And it's like, I literally lost like $15,000 in the span of a week of future money that was supposed to be there, that was supposed to help me push into the next thing for next year, or to pay off the rest of my car, or to do this and do that, and like start settling my debts and start moving on, from, living in one place to another. And it just like was, each one was just disappearing one by one. And I hit like a major depression.
Yeah.
I didn't want to talk to the guys. I didn't want to, I was lashing out at them more than anything else. And I just asked for patience at that point. I was just like, please give me a little bit of time to like reconfigure what I need to do. I need to figure out where income's going to be coming from for a while. And I need to kind of focus in now. And so it took a while. Unemployment helped a lot, but it's a short-term solution for a gushing wound,
Right.
Basically.
Yeah. It's a Band-Aid.
It's a total Band-Aid, and the worst part is that like at this point, with our industry being the way it is, like we could just lose the goddamn leg in comparison to getting a scar.
Right.
And so it kind of sucks to watch happen. It's really the people that are going to be affected. A lot of people are kind of worried about the artist, and it's like, no, the artist will be fine. They will figure something out. If you look right now, look at Travis Scott. He's figured something out over this whole situation. Has been featured in Fortnite the way he has and made money doing that. Now he's got the Travis Scott meal at fucking McDonald's, and it's lit. It's fucking stupid.
Oh,
it's just.
Is it lit, Mark?
That's what they've been telling him. It's like, it's
Oh
lit.
God, that's actually
Because that's a part of one of his songs in Sicko Mode. Because it's lit, really loud. So kids, of course, when they go to order it, they said, "Yeah, it's lit."
I don't know what that means. It's fine.
I'm a victim of marketing, and I don't even know it.
I know. Well, and like that's the funny thing is like, he's gonna be fine. What's gonna suck is the production manager that worked for him, or the personal assistants that he had, or his lighting designer, his stage manager, his multiple people he had on a crew, that those guys are the ones that are going to get fucked in the end. And those are the guys who, I've heard lots of different people say like, well, just find another job. And it's like, this is not a job anymore. There's something different when you're in this industry. It's a career, it's a lifestyle, it's a lot of things. And to just be told to flippantly like just do something else, it's not the same, and
well, not only that, but like it's not like there's a ton of jobs going away. It's not like somebody like that can just move to another. They have a specific skill set. They can't just move into something else, especially if something else isn't hiring.
Exactly, and
It's
that's
ridiculous.
and that's the thing is that other companies are also just not having those openings anymore because that's the way they can save money because they're not making money like they used to. You know, it's a it's a very strange situation of like people wanting to get back to normal, but there's no normal to get back to just yet. And yes,
Yeah.
there are jobs that come into play every single day, but you know, I do feel that if you're not happy doing those type of things, then why do it? Why torture yourself? They've seen me torture myself in public storage.
Mhm.
They've seen me, you know, just not be happy in those kind of situations. And
Yeah.
as stressful as the industry can be, I would not do that ever again. I would go back every single day if I have to push a fucking case uphill for
Mhm.
hours on it. I don't care. I love it.
Yeah.
And so yeah, like I said, it hit me super hard. Got super depressed. Um, it helped me start looking inward and start doing things I haven't done or wanted to do, but just never had the moment to do it.
Yeah.
Started taking like photography a little bit more seriously with Polaroids and
Mhm.
like having fun with that. Started reading books, which I haven't done since college, maybe.
Mhm.
And like finally getting into books that I had never thought I'd ever read and just having fun with it, or you know, meditating at one point and kind of understanding myself, getting into keto a lot harder and losing weight and stuff. And, so there has been like a personal change and like a personal um, just growth. But at the same time, it just sucks not to be doing what I really want to be doing too, by, seeing a lot of the coworkers and friends that I have in the festival business and the live industry business and trying to go for that again. It's always fun when you make money doing it, but
It's
not
it's
being there. It's
it's a passion thing and it's a career, and I think that's how it's different. To me, so I'm working as a live performing and writing musician, and you have some obviously just as much experience as I do in that regard. But when I'm sitting thinking about I can't play live shows anymore. I can write music, but no one's going to be able to play it right now because we can't have enough people. What am I going to do now? The logical progression for that is we've all seen it. We're all taking part in it. We could put our shit online. I could do synthesized music. I can make beats. I can write Minecraft loops like I've been doing. I can stream video games because everyone loves to play video games. And sometimes people will let me talk at them while I'm playing video games. And I can actually make money doing that.
yeah.
There's a way to monetize that. That set of skills that I've built up and my being able to build rapport with people through being a live musician is useful in that regard. I can reasonably transition from that to streaming and making money on the internet.
Yeah, exactly.
I've seen people that were some of my closest performing musician friends go into real estate, go into insurance sales. Again, the people thing, working with people, totally reasonable transition. But what are people doing? Like, are people able to sort of make any sort of reasonable transitions into? I know it's not as easy to just find a job, and I'm not even talking about acquiring that and making that sustainable. But what are people? What are your friends talking about? What are they doing? What are they doing to kill time? Are they able to find work? If so, like where can someone with live event experience make some headway?
That's the interesting thing is that I think a lot of us have gotten back to what we've done in the past. So like I know that there are still some friends that like they'll go back to being a barista. I've had some musician friends that, well, I'll go back to retail and just deal with it that way, or go, do this and that. Just, whatever they can get at the moment and just not really worry about it. I've seen some friends in the festival world where like if like they've been in this office for so long and now they're going and transitioning into something else, and it's like either they find another group that hasn't been completely like destroyed and they go and they work with them and still strive and still thrive with them, or they're now on unemployment and they're just waiting, and they're just like, well, this is all I can do. I have money saved up, and now I'm saving this money too, but I can't do anything else because I don't want to, and
Right.
I don't blame them. They've also done this self-exploring and stuff. I actually have one friend who he works in site operations that I would kind of help with a lot, and he ended up going into working with FEMA and working with contracts with them,
Wow.
and it made sense. And for him, he's like, it's new experience, and I'm learning on the job because I've never welded before, I've never built these type of things before in my life, and now he has to learn how to do it, and it helped him out, and it's only going to make him stronger when he comes back to the festival world, because honestly, I think maybe 9 out of 10 of those people are going to come back in reality. Like, there's going to be a lot of people who might just get over it and move on. But if once the day that they announce, hey, we're putting this on, everybody's going to come back.
Yeah.
Everybody that can come back will come back, because they don't want to leave this kind of work. We don't do it majority of the time for the money. The money's great, but like, we don't do it just for the money. We do it because it's unique and it makes sense for our lifestyles. That's it. But the other thing I really got into was baking. I don't understand that, but I really have been falling in love with baking, and it kind of cracked me up because at 31 I started understanding that better and liking it. In comparison to I'm thinking like Dr. Lane. One day he had opened his studio after a summer, and he came in and he's like, guys, I made cookies. And he was just we all started laughing because like we didn't get it. We're all 18 to 22 era, and like we didn't get it. We just thought it was funny to hear this man tell us, I made cookies, and he was all excited about it, and he made all these different things. And then like I started doing it. I made my cookies, or I made jam, or I made all these other things, and I started realizing the life lessons in doing that itself, of just like creating in this way.
Yeah.
I'm not creating music all the time or that much at all nowadays, but creating in this different spectrum like has been fascinating to me, and it's been fun to do, and at the end of the day I get to eat, and it always makes me happy. That's the high reward for me, is to eat. But
Man, now I want cookies.
I don't know if I got a batch for you or not.
We need to have a Rogues Among Us bake off where Mark bakes 5 things and then we all get to try each one.
Yes.
You thought I was going to say that everyone bakes something, but no, just Mark.
Oh, smart on your point.
So, I mean, that's just Mark baking and us eating. That's not really a bake-off.
Well, we could still call
With
it
himself.
that, though.
We could do a Rogues bake sale.
Oh my God.
I
could.
think that would be
And
That
we
would
could
be
call it
amazing.
Let's Get Baked.
Ho, 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 ho.
Look at Robert. Look at Robert.
I
Well,
put
it used
Robert
to
to sleep over there.
Nah, we good. I have a feeling like my backdrop's gonna fall on my face, like around.
It doesn't hurt the video.
It'll go viral.
Definitely
anyway.
adds entertainment value.
Yeah.
Thanks.
We're entertainers, right, Robert?
I'm
So we're
glad.
good.
I'm glad to know that y'all are willing to sacrifice my face for the entertainment value.
Sacrifice the drummers first.
Shit.
I actually,
No,
hate playing-
it's usually the bass players.
True that.
if they're there at all. I mean,
It's whatever Raw wants. Sacrifice to Raw. Not Rob, but Raw.
Ra, the puppy.
The papa.
So we've graced the 2-hour mark,
Dope.
which is a good thing, and I think there's a lot of compelling thoughts. I mean, anytime 5 people get together, I think it's always going to be interesting. But if there's anything you guys want to kind of say in summation, I will just say that like it's cool to get a little bit of insight on a group, like I said, that I was a fan of for quite some time, and now I'm lucky enough to be a part of and get to play music and write music and create things with you guys. I'm super excited. I'm more excited even than I was, when I first heard that you guys were thinking of having me on. And the more I learn, the more I know, and the more that we kind of hang out and do stuff together, the cooler it is, I think, which is good because that's not always the case. There's things I've been super excited about, and then I get into it, and I'm like, this kind of sucks a lot, and I really don't want to do it anymore.
I immediately regret this.
Yeah.
But what is it from Arrested Development? I made a huge mistake.
Yeah. But do y'all have any final thoughts or anything else you want to kind of talk about before we wrap up?
I think really just be aware that we're making some big pushes on social media, especially on YouTube. So if you guys aren't already, please go check us out. Just search Rogues Among Us. We are putting up like new videos. Seems like much more frequently than ever. We recently just put up a cover of Life Will Change. We're doing something else, maybe in line with the Amazon show The Boys pretty soon, right?
Perhaps.
Hell yeah.
Then
Perhaps.
yeah, we have a Daft Punk cover we're working on too, and then we have some original stuff as well. So I mean, if you guys aren't already subscribed, follow us on YouTube because there's gonna be some cool stuff. And then Brad does some awesome, amazing stuff on Instagram for us. We're on pretty much every social media platform, but like YouTube and Instagram's pretty big for us right now.
We should get back on MySpace.
Yeah, we've got a
MySpace
lot
is
of,
great.
We've got a lot of new subscribers on our YouTube channel, and we're trying to do more content for our existing fans and for our new fans that we will have soon, and just trying to show more of who we are and what we can do, and then we'll have some new material at some point in the future too that's original.
Yeah. And honestly, like, other than like the Rogue stuff, you should check out Brad's new stuff he's doing on his own. He's been putting out a lot of his own music. You should check out Rob's
D&D.
I feel like it's a video podcast in reality, but a D&D campaign.
We've gotten a sneak preview, and it's really cool. Like, his video work is pretty solid, and especially for a podcast, it's like very entertaining.
It really is. It's called Spell It Out. It's fucking hilarious.
It's gonna be out in October, right? October 1st.
Well, so we're releasing some videos. Actually, so next Thursday, the first video drops. So that is on the 17th of September. And we're going to be releasing videos every Monday and Thursday after that. The first actual episode is, October 1st.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. Nope, October 8th. I'm sorry. So that'll be the first episode of High School D&D. And the really cool part about that is it features Houston artists as the soundtrack. So we have Mark, we have Brad, we have Risky Ray, we got Dr. Paul Garza. So, it's pretty cool, like being able to feature all these Houston artists on a D&D channel and get to show off some of their chops.
Yeah, absolutely is. Other than that, you should go to the best little drive-in in Houston if you live here in Houston.
Hell yeah.
We have shows basically Fridays and Saturdays. We're trying to show off as much as we can. I think we're actually in the process of moving over to Raven Tower, which has been pretty cool. So we're going to have a lot more going on over there. But the big thing that I've been helping with them is just featuring local artists, as basically like the trailers instead of having trailers for movies. So it's been kind of cool to be able to help the Houston scene, and at such a time when like there is no way to perform safely,
Right.
So it's we're gonna do everything that we can as individuals to support our friends and fam, and ourselves as well in this type of situation. So that's all I gotta plug.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Well, Kevin, do you have anything to plug? Do you want
Nah.
to know? Okay. Well, I mean, if you have a safe or remote gig, hire Kevin to play bass. He's a badass bass player. We don't want anyone to come to harm or danger. I'm going to put links to everything. I'll collect those and make sure that those go out with this episode / video thing. If you all, I mentioned it earlier, I stream World of Warcraft and Minecraft now, and music composition, and sometimes all three at the same time. That was a really weird and really long night. But if you guys want to come check that out, you can find me on Twitch at Ornith Music. Ornith Music is kind of my brand for everything. So if you check out Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, I'm all on there. I do mostly music stuff, but like I said earlier, I'm kind of working into video games. So check all of those things out right now. I don't want to sound too beggy, but please help your musician friends and your live music friends and your friends that are in bands, because we do need help right now. And so think about it. Think about what a day would be like without music. And the longer we go as musicians or as members of a band or as content creators, the longer we go, or the more days we have in a row where people aren't considering us and thinking about us, the closer we get to the point where there's not going to be new music. There's not going to be new YouTube videos. There's not going to be new feature films. There's not going to be new TV. And nobody wants that. It's part of our life. It's part of our culture, as it should be. So support your artist friends. Share this idea. Share everything. It's really easy to forget that, but send it to someone. Send it to someone you know. Post it somewhere that you don't know. If you would, please help us out, because we're entertainers and at heart, and we love making things for people, and we need people to make them for. So that would be my closing thought, is just, help us out. We love you, and help us out.
Help us.